So the last group, the group D, unfortunately, we will not have any surprise for you as we are the first group. So you know very well the case now. We will have, as the other groups, 3 parts. I will start the first part with Lionel. Then Chai and Anna will present the IP strategies, and finally Thorsten will show you the new opportunity. So the assumption for us for this case study, we were limited to the documents given by Alex, so we didn't make any additional searches. And to manage the case, we have limited ourselves to the lecture and the slides given by Alex. So I will not repeat all the information about the global healthcare market, as the other groups presented very well the overview and the case, but just I will tell you that to give you an answer today, we were interested by the economic context. So we read about the global healthcare market, the German market, the B. Braun company, and the competitors. So I will not repeat all the information already seen in the other presentation. Just to say that we are now in the medical technology are facing a complex challenge about regulation, competition, and technologies. Companies like Braun must deal with exogenous influences, like, for example, the digital transformation. One of the key trends in this field is the smart medical technology, because this smart medical technology is answering all the needs of patients, like, for example, the comprehensive 24/7, 365 monitoring and care, the personalized therapy, the improved prevention, the lower treatment costs, and the higher average life expectancy. So I will let Lionel present you B. Braun and continue with our scenario proposed. Lionel, for you.
Hello, everyone. So let me first present the company itself, since we were chastised yesterday about not presenting the context when we were presenting. So B. Braun is an international supplier to the healthcare sector who provides products and services for hospitals, physicians in private practices, the home care sector, and the extracorporeal blood treatment. The company itself was founded as a pharmacy back in the first half of the 19th century, and it has grown over time to become one of the world's leading suppliers of solutions for the healthcare market. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see that B. Braun's business is subdivided into 4 divisions. The hospital care, which equips hospitals and is a leader in clinical care and inpatient care products. Aesculap, which is a market leader for handheld surgical instruments. Outpatient market, which takes care of patient care outside of hospital operations, basically for chronically ill and long-term patients. And Avitum, which is a full-service provider for dialysis. Next slide, please. On the next slide, what you simply can see that they have a big staff and a huge turnover. The figures we have in the case study is even bigger. It has grown. I'm guessing these are a bit older figures. So in 2018, the company had sales of almost 7 billion euros and employed 64,000 people. What is also notable is that the company is owner operated. So the CEO of the company is Anna Maria Braun. Next slide, please. And now coming to the digital transformation and how it affects the MedTech companies like B. Braun. So basically B. Braun, as all other MedTech companies, are involved in the digital revolution in healthcare and are affected by it. The digital transformation allows these companies to switch from a purely transaction-based business model, which is characteristic of classic, let's say, manufacturing companies where you sell the product. So in their case, selling MRI machines, for example, to an as-a-service business model where they provide their products with complementary services as a service provider. So as a subscription to the use of the MRI, which the company would install at the practitioner without transferring the ownership of the product itself. So up until now, MedTech manufacturers, including B. Braun, would sell their products. So their business model was transaction-based, the transaction being the sale of the product. Whereas now digital transformation makes these companies offer the products as part of a service package with additional services like maintenance of the product, updates to the system, integration into a larger digital ecosystem, etc. So these changes allow expanding the potential market to customers with a smaller financial capacity. Previously, you could only sell these expensive equipments, such as MRIs, to hospitals, but not smaller private practices. Now, these smaller private practices could subscribe to the service offer, and that is a win-win situation. The customer gets previously unavailable equipment at his disposal, including the additional services which B. Braun's offers, whereas B. Braun can offer its services and not only its products now to a newly expanded customer base. We had a similar situation in the case, if you remember, in module 1 of Light as a Service. So nevertheless, these changes in the business model also demand an equivalent adjustment of IP strategies of the companies. And you will see these changes in my colleague's continuation of this presentation. Thank you.
All right, so for my part, we will discuss more about the IP strategies that B. Braun is going to actively execute. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just a recap of what Lionel has mentioned just now, the 4 key areas which B. Braun is playing. And in the next slide, we will first start off with the transaction-based business model. And what we are proposing is a value-added monopoly IP strategy. And before we go into the details of the IP strategy, first of all, it's very important for us to really look into the customer profile and how to address the pain points and also the wants of this customer. And if we look at that, typically these customers are big healthcare providers with big budgets and who operate the devices 24/7. And secondly, they would be the ones who can afford to buy a premium device, which outperforms the competition, and that's very important. And finally, in this kind of a business model, there is very likely to only have one-time interactions between the hospital and the MRI manufacturer. And because this device would be directly bought by the hospital or the clinic. And when we consider this, we move into the IP strategy of the value-added monopoly, because this particular customer segment can afford to pay premium. And that means critical features which are important to them needs to be secured in terms of exclusivity, right? And this can also help to block a competition from having comparable benefits to the customer, which also leads to a higher degree of perceived differentiation. And another approach, which is separate from the value-added monopoly, could be something like a monopoly in a box approach, which Alex yesterday mentioned is something like an ingredient kind of a branding. And in terms of MRI machines, there could be certain key components which are very important and also helps in terms of branding. For example, like in laptops, could be chips like Intel. So that helps also to secure perceived advantage of the product. So in the next slide, you could also see an example which we identify for such a value-added monopoly IP strategy. And so we are not expert in the MRI machine, but basically this pattern example shows techniques of evaluating image data from fMRI. So basically having time series of image data and how to correlate and also use them to provide a more accurate data for the healthcare service provider. So all in all, for a transaction-based business model, such IP strategy forms the cornerstone for the service-based business model. And I will pass on to Anna to further elaborate on this.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think has been mentioned by others, the digitalization offers new opportunities to both diagnose, treat, and manage patients, and those are things that can be leveraged within the context of B. Braun current divisions. Next slide, please. And so all of these different opportunities of handling patient care are really leveraged on large volumes of data patient data that we need to ensure is not accessed by unauthorized third parties, and also relies on the ability of different devices to interact to be able to kind of provide clinicians with better supports for their decisions. And so whereas this, can we please go back? Thank you. So one thing, there is two main things that are important in terms of challenges if we really want to leverage on these opportunities to leverage on the digitalization, which are really ensuring that we manage security risks and that systems are interoperable. And obviously in the context of MedTech, which is, as you know, a very well regulated industry, and as was also described by Group B, standards are a good way of ensuring that we can leverage on those opportunities. Next slide, please. And so this is why we are proposing that in the context of this opportunities, the best solution would be to leverage on a hub monopoly strategy, whereas the function of the protection would be to protect features that ensure that the storage is secure and ensures that the different devices can connect and interact with each other in a safe way. This would mean that devices that comply to the standards that are described in these patents would need to use those patents, leading to means of needing to the need of licenses, and also providing opportunities for cross licensing, because as was also discussed, MedTech involves quite a lot of players. Different instruments might need to be connected to support better decisions. So opportunities to really share cross licenses might appear. And obviously, one direct economic effect of this, especially of the grant licenses, is really the direct cash inflow that can come from this. And with this, I'll just like to share one example of one possible patent in this context. And this is from, next slide, please. And this is a patent from a competitor of B. Braun Siemens. So this is a patent describing a system for the management and processing of data from a clinical facility. So what you can see here in this figure is that there is a number of devices in that can be connected through the cloud, and the data can be accessed by the clinicians through a number of different devices. So the patent, what is describing is a system that allows to manage and process this data in this way. And so this would be one example, and I'll let Thorsten now explain how we would apply this to B. Braun.
Thanks. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as we are staying within the hub monopoly as our generic IP structure, we thought about how can we create further revenues within that system. And one idea definitely was to have additional complementary assets in that system. So meaning we thought about what kind of goods we can have that increase the value of another good or service when they're used in combination. And one idea that we got from the brief was that we should focus on those goggles and introduce goggles into the market, which of course then can interoperate with the MRI machine as such. So of course this again is a very physical good. So definitely when we stay in this hub monopoly, we should also create further revenues by staying digital or staying intangible. So it doesn't make sense to only have a lot of new mechanics again. So we should also definitely also appropriate or create benefits from the interoperability of the different devices, and also from the benefits from the data architecture. So that means by having certain additional AI or devices that can also evaluate the data, we can also make use of the goggles in the sense that they can already give the physician an idea, this is already what kind of disease they are and how he can better evaluate the data from the MRI machine. So that means in the end, what we need to have, of course, patents on the goggles, but also, of course, a lot of patent protection on the data processing, so meaning the interfaces and the interoperability of the data. And on top of that, probably it would also be good to have design protection for the goggles because they can be very distinctive. We also thought about trademark protection, but as we read in one of the briefs, in the medical industry, sometimes trademark protection probably is not so important, or it's if it was important, it could be quite expensive to introduce and doesn't create that many benefits. Yeah, so basically the idea is to expand this hub monopoly system by having another complementary asset and also have protection on the interoperability of the data and the interfaces.